Welcome in to another Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. My name is Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
We're doing great. We're doing great. I'm excited to talk about long-term cornerstone of the franchise.
Absolutely. Tonight, we are going to talk about Karl Anthony Towns as part of our deep dive player profile. And I should mention, we've done Rudy Gobert so far. We've done Terrence Shannon Jr. We've done Rob Dillingham. And I believe we did Anthony Edwards as well. So you can go back and listen to that on Spotify, YouTube, Apple as well. Go and check those out if you're interested. Tonight, we're talking about Karl Anthony Towns. And what I found crazy is he's going into year 10 with the Timberwolves. It doesn't seem real. It seems like we just drafted him like a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, and I think some of that is because, at least for me, he seems so young and kind of like immature and still like feeling his way out to me sometimes. And in reality, he's a 10-year vet. Like, that shouldn't be the case.
Right. And we've all seen like his stuff playing video games and his weird reactions and stuff like that. So yeah, he's an interesting character. Obviously, the first overall number one draft pick of the Minnesota Timberwolves in team history from Kentucky. And we'll get into Cat and his fit with the squad, but hey, at least we took him and not the other big guy in the draft.
Yeah, Okafor.
Okafor, yeah.
The rumor was, or no, wait, that's his name, right? Yeah.
Jahlil Okafor, yeah. He went to
Jahlil.
Sixers.
So rumor was that's who Flip Saunders wanted all the way up until about a day or two before the draft. And the other people that were in the room were like, listen, man, like Okafor's not the guy, and they really had to talk Flip off the ledge for that. So I'm glad they did. He's been a very solid, productive player.
He has.
The contract is what the contract is. We might get into that, but yeah, much better than a complete miss at the first pick, which happens.
So I wanted to get into a couple stats here. Obviously, Cat in his 9th season, but really his first big playoff run. Obviously, he did play against Memphis and Denver in years before, and that Houston series as well, but really his first run in the playoffs. So I just want to go over some of the stats, and then you can react to them. Against the Suns, he shot 53% from the field, 52% from three, and averaged 18 points a game and was a plus 17 in those games. Against the Nuggets, he shot 51% from the field, 39% from three, averaged 18.5 points, and put up about 9 boards. And combined against the Nuggets and Suns, put up 51% from the field, 9.2 rebounds per game, and shot 44% from three. Now, obviously, this dips against the Mavericks, where he shot 37% from the field, averaged 8.4 rebounds, and only 24% from three. Now, here's the big stats that I found interesting. In wins in the playoffs, he shot 57% from the field, 46% from three, averaged 19.7 points, and was a plus 93. In losses in the playoffs, 36% from the field, 26% from three, and 17 points per game. And what I think that tells you, at least in a playoff scenario, Cat's really the X factor on this team. He's really the decider of if this team is going to go anywhere. He really needs to be playing well. He needs to be a Pippen to Ant Jordan in a way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and again, talking about, like I said, it seems like hasn't been around that long because there's so much immaturity to his game. There's things that he could do that would just be simple. Like when in a lot of those losses, I would assume those are the games that he's, trying to do things that he really shouldn't be doing. Like keep it simple. You're an amazing shooter. keep that going. Like with some of those stats you read, if you're shooting 50%, or 60% from the field and 50% from three, and you only average 18 points, you're not shooting enough.
Mhm.
And if the problem is you're not shooting enough, is it because you can't get your own shot? Like, why are you not shooting more? Um, there's just there's things about his game that are very frustrating. But like you said, I mean, if Cat is going, that's a nice 2010 piece to add to Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert, who are fairly consistent.
Right. And we've seen in the past, I mean, he's gone for 60 twice, although this year when he went for 60, we lost the game, which honestly, that was the worst game of the year, and I happened to be there. But I'll digress with that. It's just what's frustrating about Cat is he can be so on, like you were mentioning, and he can be so off. And it's
Yeah.
not only about missing shots. It's not all about missing shots. It's like you said. It's about forcing the ball, trying to make something out of nothing rather than just it almost feels like he at times tries to enforce himself as a star rather than just
Yes.
playing within the offense. Like, for example, when he takes like 4 or 5 dribbles and tries to back someone down and ends up getting an offensive foul. Like, one thing I wanted to mention right before we went on air here, I was watching the Bad Boys documentary, and they were talking about how Bill Laimbeer completely got in the heads of the Portland Trailblazers when they were playing them in the finals. And I was just thinking, man, if Cat was on the Trailblazers in that series, he would have followed out in the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it's hard to have there's two sides to Karl Anthony Towns. The supreme talented, legitly probably the best shooting big man ever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then there's the side that's super immature. And I feel like, and I've said this before, um, I feel like he has something in his mind of what an NBA superstar should be. He
Mm-hmm.
has something in his mind how that person should act, how that person should dress, how that person should have his internet role be a social media role on Instagram, and then he's trying to fake all of those things so that people are like, oh, Karl Anthony Towns is a superstar because he checks all these boxes that superstars check. But in reality, Karl Anthony Towns, just be yourself. You're a
Mm-hmm.
really good basketball player. Some things you hear the greatest basketball players talk about, like Kevin Durant and guys like that, is finding your spots. Like, have a handful of spots on the court where you're just an assassin,
Yeah.
and have simple moves to get to those spots. Karl Anthony Towns, his stuff is always so difficult. Like, he makes everything so much more difficult than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said, it leads to offensive fouls, it leads to turnovers. Those behind, he's by far the worst fancy passer in NBA history. The guy will throw behind the back pass for no reason to the fourth, fifth row in the stands once
Mm-hmm.
or twice a week. Like, yeah, he can be very frustrating, but on the other end of the coin, he's super talented, and there's not many 7-foot human beings that, can shoot 40% from three on high volume.
Right. He's kind of, I don't want to say new, but for lack of a better word, new. He's the new branded big man in the NBA. And I think he needs to embrace that role a little bit. Like, he should really just keep it simple. Couple dribbles, little
Yes.
hook shot,
Yes.
or just shoot a three. That's all we need you to do. And what I want to kind of rotate into this, how do you like Cat as, and we've seen a pretty big sample size of it already, although injuries have taken away how much they played together. But how do you like Cat as a sidekick for Ant? Do you think he's good enough to be a number 2 on, now I know we made it to the Western Conference Finals last year, but a championship winning team?
No,
Okay.
I don't think he is for one reason alone. Unless Rob Dillingham becomes this guy, if I have a guy that I'm paying super max money to, because that's part of it. Like, we can't say that the money's not part of it because we're in a salary cap sport and it's very much part of it. If we have a guy that's making super max money, and his main ability is offense, like Karl Anthony Towns is not a defensive juggernaut. Like he's a big body. He's, got some athleticism, so he can hold up okay on defense. But if you're an offensive player, when Anthony Edwards is off the court, we need to be able to throw you the ball and you need to get buckets, in my opinion. We need a guy that can do that. And he's not. He needs somebody to set it all up for him, and then he'll finish. He's a great, kind of like how Kevin Love was with Rubio. Rubio fed him multiple all-star games because he would break down the defense, kick it out to Love for the open three, and he would hit it, or like how Pekovic was, where it'd be a pick and roll and he'd spoon feed him for a layup. Like, the guard's doing most of the heavy lifting and the other guy's just finishing the play. Karl Anthony Towns is an elite finisher, but without an elite guard that can set him up, a lot of that value is gone.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Now, the other point of the argument is, or the other side of the argument is, I mean, they made it to the Western Conference Finals with Cat as the number 2, and they almost won a lot of those games. They were right into it. Without some Luka magic, it's 2-3 coming back to Minnesota. So, man, and that's why we're talking about, I think Cat needs to embrace his role a little more. He's got to stop just V-lining it to the basket where he falls over and isn't back on defense anyway. He's got to just shoot, like I said, shoot threes, easy post moves. That's all you need to do. Now, in the past, you probably had to do more because you didn't have Anthony Edwards. You had bad teams. You had, would you say a lot of maybe Cat's early stats were empty stats?
Oh, of course. I think a lot of his current stats are empty stats, to be honest with you. I mean, he's kind of like an ultimate front runner. When we're doing well, he's going to pile up numbers, but when we're doing bad, he disappears because, again, he can't get his own bucket very well. So it's struggle, but you said embrace his role. And that really just jumped in my head is his role isn't a superstar. Like, he's not going to be a superstar, and that's perfectly fine. I get it. We're paying him as one, but he's here. So if he's here and he's getting paid that, he needs to be an elite catch and shoot guy. He needs to be an elite pick and roll guy. He needs to set screens better. He needs to rebound better. He needs to do the simple stuff better. And the fancy stuff and the superstar stuff, leave that at home. Like, we don't have any need for that anymore. Like, we've got Anthony Edwards to play that role. We don't need you doing the fancy stuff. You just finish the plays. Like you said, catch at the elbow, either pull up right over your shorter defender or 1-2 dribble, hook shot or something, up at the top of the key. It's either a straight line drive, open or shoot a 3-pointer or move the ball. I don't want to see you do any side to side dribbles, nothing between your legs. Like, you either catch, and if they close out hard, attack a straight line or move the ball. Like, we got to simplify his role. And I think that would make him even more effective.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think that, like I was mentioning, Cat is such an X factor towards us winning. I mean, like we were mentioning I mentioned earlier in the Mavs series, this close, right on the doorstep to winning a lot of those games. And how does Cat do in those games? Well, I have the stats here. He shot 32%, put up 9 boards, and this is the big stat. Shot 4 for 28, 14% from 3 points, and was a -31.
Yeah, of course, we lose those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of those makes were in the second half against the Dallas Mavericks in Game 5 at home when we were getting crushed anyway. So that's why I think Cat is so important to the nucleus, to this team. And I don't know. I don't see a scenario, unless it goes completely pear-shaped and they want to do a complete rebuild at midseason. Like, let's say we're Lord God forbid, but let's say we're 5, 6, 7, 8 games under 500 at the All-Star break, and they want to just completely blow it up and retry under Anthony Edwards. I don't see a scenario where we trade Cat at this point.
Well, not to get super GM in numbers wise, but I don't think it's even possible.
Right.
So with the way, when we're in the second apron, which is the punishment we have for having like the second highest or the highest payroll in team sports history in the United States is what we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that we can trade Karl Anthony Towns is if the person we're trading him for, because it can only be a 1-for-1 deal, has the exact same salary.
Mm-hmm.
That person can't make any more. Or it has to be a team that has extra salary cap room, which is almost nobody.
Right.
So we're really hamstrung with this new rule on what we can do with him. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out, because all logic, financially and even team structure-wise, says that Karl Anthony Towns probably has to be moved when you've got a guy like Naz Reid behind him who at times looks more effective on the court than Karl Anthony Towns does, because he's got a wider range of abilities. I don't know if we're going to be able to get off Cat's contract, so it might just be something that we have to deal with. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what Tim Connolly can do with that.
And one thing I wanted to mention, and I don't think people bring this up enough with Karl Anthony Towns. He started his career, actually his first 3 seasons, he didn't miss a single game. He started all 82 games the first 3 seasons. But ever since then, and put an asterisk on the 2020, 2021, and the 2020, 2021 season with COVID, but ever since 2018, 2019, total games played 77, 35, 50, which COVID a little bit, 74, 29, and then 62. Like last year, he didn't even play enough games to qualify to win MVP. Not saying that he was going to win MVP, but I don't know. With torn meniscus, are we worried at all as he gets older a little bit about his injury proneness? Because it seems like for a big man, big men seem to break down a little faster.
Yeah, and he's a very awkward athlete, which is part of my biggest gripe about him long term as a Timberwolf is he just doesn't physically have the ability to move the way that elite bigs can move now. You know, like if you look at even a guy like Porzingis, which isn't even elite big, but a similar era big, he moves on the perimeter like a small forward. You know, he can go side to side. He can come off, even Naz moves way more fluidly. Cat is kind of a robot. He can go forward and he can kind of backpedal. But if you want him to go right or left, it's like, Herman Munster or like Frankenstein moving out there. Like it's real clompy and slow. So that sort of lack of athleticism to me can very possibly lead to injuries because your body just can't bounce back or flex or move the way it needs to. So yeah, there's definitely going to be some worry about that, but he keeps his body in elite shape.
Right.
I haven't seen his Instagram blowing up with pictures of the Maldives and fancy island nations and stuff like that this summer as much as last. So maybe he's really buckling down with our last playoff push and he wants to try to make a name for himself this year. We'll see.
Yeah, it's possible. Maybe, though, like I was mentioning, those bad performances against the Mavs, maybe that's biting at him. Maybe he is going back and saying, hey, I need to be better when the time is there. And we have a let's be honest, once, maybe twice in a lifetime opportunity with this young guy named Anthony Edwards, particularly for Cat's playing career. There is a 0 to maybe 1% chance that he gets to play with someone as good as, maybe not as good, but as young and as ready to go as Anthony Edwards at the time he is now in his career. So maybe he's going back and saying, man, this is an opportunity. We made it so far, but if I'm just a little bit better and I just do things a little bit better, maybe we can take the next step as a team. And like I was saying earlier, I was watching the Bad Boys documentary, which I'll give you this: different NBA, different times, different play style. But I think the cornerstones of it remained the same. Like, you don't get too many opportunities to do something special unless you're Michael Jordan. And if you have that level of talent, like with Anthony Edwards, and Cat can basically just go and look at the roster, how it's constructed. It's built to win now. There is a small window for the Minnesota Timberwolves before they're going to have to do something. So, like a long story short, maybe he's just more ready this offseason.
Well, I mean, like you said, look at the roster. You've got the 6th man of the year. You've got like a top 5-6 MVP candidate. You've got the defensive player of the year. You got a top 10 pick coming in the draft. You've got Jaden McDaniels, who's a all defensive player, and then him. So like that roster's stacked without him. So like, yeah, this is a stacked roster. You were talking about, kind of like going back to the lab and putting in work. It made me think, like, what skill set or what ability has Karl Anthony Towns added to his game in the last 5 or 6 years, where you're like, oh, like he never had that turnaround jump shot, or, oh, he didn't have that little running hook, or like, I don't remember. I can't think of anything he's added. Like, it's been pretty much stationary 3-point shooter or straight line drive for 8 years. So like,
yeah, the one thing I will argue that he did add, and now this is a much earlier in his career, and this was kind of stemming the tide of the NBA a little bit. I will say he did add a 3-pointer, because if you look at the stats,
well, he was not allowed to shoot a 3-pointer earlier. They didn't want him shooting it.
First year of his career, he averaged 1.1 attempts. Then it went up to 3.4, then 3.5, 4.6, 7.9, and so on and so on. It's actually gone down since then to 5.3.
I want him to get back to get back to that 7.9 number. Like, that's another thing. You are a 3-point shooter. That's kind of what you are. Do more of that. Like, I mean, there's no reason why, Julius Randle should be shooting more 3-pointers than you a game. Like, this is what you do. So part of it is simplifying his game and embracing what you're elite at and doing more of that. But a part of it is finding a niche that you can add, where we have no really low post game. Find a way that you can punish a small forward or a shooting guard that defends you, because that's still been the knock on him the knock I've had on him for a long time is, if other teams can defend you with a small forward, which they do a lot, then you're a small forward. You're not a big man.
Or a guard. Yeah. Remember, even though we won the game, remember that game earlier in the season against the Celtics where they basically took him out of the game with Drew Holiday?
Yep. And that's the thing. Karl Anthony Towns' post game is so pathetic, and he starts from the 3-point line and tries to back these guys down, and he can't. So, like, if you can't back down a guy that's 6 inches shorter than you and 70 pounds less than you, you're not a big man. And if that's the case, then you need to shoot a lot more, it becomes a detriment to our team, opposed to this whole going big thing, which, can sometimes be a huge advantage. But again, if they can defend a max player who was a center with a shooting guard, that's not a good look.
Right. And even as we talk now on the TV, I'm watching NBA TV kind of on the side, and it's the Boston Celtics media day. And I'm just thinking, man, Cat has to be good if we're going to beat that team. He really does.
But in reality, I mean, if the one thing that they have kind of their one kind of, their bigs are old. Like they've got Porzingis, who is unique, and hard to deal with. Mind you, he's also last year, I think he was the best points per game points per possession post up player in the NBA.
Mhm.
So, because he's punishes small guys, that's what Cat needs to get back to. But then they've got Al Horford, who's really just kind of a vet now. So with Rudy and with Cat, we should be able to have an advantage there. And that's
Yep.
something that if we end up playing them, we need to take advantage of. And if we can't, because they can guard him with Derek White or whatever,
Right.
that's an ugly, ugly setting for us.
Right. And you think about some of the teams in the Western Conference, we should be able to beat them with big guys. Like, for example, and I know we'll do a Western Conference preview coming up here, but look at the OKC Thunder. They got Chet, and that's basically it.
They got the guy from the Knicks now.
Harkenstein. That's probably why they got Harkenstein as well.
For sure.
And then you got the Mavericks with Gafford and Lively, which we've talked about on the show a little bit with his slander of Rudy Gobert.
But not OKC, but the Pelicans have like nobody over 6'9". We got to destroy them.
Yeah, because Zion's not that tall; he's like 6'6".
Right, exactly.
So they're if they're going to run Zion at the center, their center is smaller than our small forward.
Yeah, by quite a bit, and well, height wise, and we better crush them. Like, I don't want to see 3 7-footers out there and us get out rebounded. Like, if that's the case, then those guys can't play together.
Mm-hmm.
Like you asked if I liked Karl Anthony Towns as a matchup with Anthony Edwards. Well, if he can abuse the mismatches, like when you play big, the whole goal is find the mismatch and abuse it, because that's what they're going to do to us on the other end. So if we can't abuse a mismatch, it's trouble. So I hope that that's what he's worked on this year, finding a way to catch the ball lower in the paint, work fast, and punish these little guys.
Mm-hmm. And as we head out here, I do want to give him some props for creating my favorite play in the Chris Finch playbook, which is, I don't even know if it's in the playbook, but the big to big alley-oop is my favorite play. I love when I see it every single time. When Karl Anthony Towns has the ball, he's driving the basket, throws it up to Rudy Gobert for a slam. It just puts a smile on my face every time.
And I will add, as much as I do trash Karl Anthony Towns, and I, for his attitude and his body language and his whining to the refs, he cut that down quite a bit at the end of last year. But more importantly, with a guy like Rudy Gobert coming in and with a guy like Anthony Edwards blossoming, Karl Anthony Towns, who was the superstar of this team, never really seemed jealous or petty about it too much last year. I mean, I think there was some growing pains in the beginning with Anthony Edwards, where he had some bad comments on podcasts and stuff, talking about Cat had bad comments. But I mean, to be the professional that feeds Rudy Gobert the ball, helps him succeed when he could easily be kind of snotty about that, was good to see. Like, Karl Anthony Towns' big to big passing is one of the elite things that he has on his playbook. So I hope that is used even more this year.
Absolutely. And we should clarify, we want Cat to be good. Like we want Cat to succeed. We want him to take 8 threes a game, hit half of them. Yeah. And we want to see this team go 82-0. We're just saying some of the things that we think would help Cat to be better and to be better fit with the squad. So I just wanted to say that.
Sure. Anyway, he's still an elite talent. I mean, he's an amazing player. I'd rather have him on our team than without.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And this is the Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and/or Apple. And as always, go Wolves.